Football is important. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't, right? Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad to be here again, even though it's a little bit later than you might normally expect me to upload. And honestly, you're going to see more of that because my posting schedule was a little bit too intense for me to keep up with. But I am still dedicated to providing you with the content that I want to share. So here we are again. We're talking about whether football is religious. Now, to be fair, I am much more acquainted with religion than I am with football, and especially American religion. I don't know that much about sports in general, but this is a good opportunity for us to talk about the intersection between the two, as there really is a lot of religion in sports. As for religion and football, I've been thinking about this for years. Facing the Giants was a 2006 major theatrical release put out by a church in Georgia, which is about a football coach who leads his team to victory, not necessarily by focusing on the plays, but by encouraging the players and the coaching staff to focus on God and their relationships with other people, and how this was the winning strategy, and God blessed them. God blessed the religiosity of the football team and their piety and their devotion to Him by leading to them to basically never lose a football game again because they were so favored by God. And it's not just in football either. Along the way, the coach was blessed in a variety of other ways. Material wealth, the cure for his wife's infertility, for example. And the players also experienced God's blessings as well. This included an apparent healing of a player's father who stands up from a wheelchair in the final kick of the championship game, blessed by God giving him the ability to stand up in that moment. So in that game, and in that kick where his father stands from a wheelchair, the player, whose name is David, kicks a 51-yard field goal, leading to their narrow victory against a team called the Giants, who are like the best team, and so they win the championship. Because God favors this team over the others because of their religiosity. Now, it's no coincidence, in fact, it's a pretty heavy-handed metaphor, that the player's name is David, and David is facing the Giants on his own by kicking the winning field goal, just as David in the Bible slayed a giant named Goliath with one slingshot. Throughout the film, there is a strong emphasis on God being responsible for the team's victories. God is the one who gave them the state championship and gave the players and their families all of these blessings. All of this is a reward for the religious faithfulness of the team and the school employees. Although this is a fictional story, it had an impact in the non-fictional world that led to more intersections between religion and football. There was a man who watched Facing the Giants late one night and said that it inspired him to take a job as a high school football coach, that he thought this was a sign from God, that God was leading him to be a high school football coach who would praise God in victory and defeat. And so Joseph Kennedy would kneel and pray at the 50-yard line after every game, win or lose.
And in the middle of the night, I was up watching TV and I saw Facing the Giants, and it was kind of like just a gut punch that, yeah, you're called to do this. So I accepted the position, and I made a commitment with God that, hey, I'm going to give you the glory after every game, win or lose, and just thanking Him for the opportunity to be there with the kids and to be able to compete. And so I just started taking a knee on the 50 the very first game.
Now, unlike the team in Facing the Giants, his team didn't win all of their games. So this drew a lot of attention, and the players on both sides of the football game in question would join Coach Kennedy on the 50-yard line for prayer after the games. The team in Facing the Giants was at a private Christian school, Shiloh Christian Academy, but Joseph Kennedy was teaching at a public high school. Bremerton High School fired Kennedy because they said that his actions violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. It was therefore, in their view, not constitutional for him to be having these prayer meetings of sorts on the 50-yard line after football games. The Supreme Court, however, ruled in favor of Kennedy in 2022, saying that his prayers on the 50-yard line were protected religious expression. It may seem strange, right? This emphasis that it is a vital part of someone's religion to combine football with prayer. But prayer and football do seem to go together quite a bit. Coaches and players engage in a variety of rituals, including these pep talks before their games that often will be religious in nature and will lead to the group praying together before they go out onto the field.
All right, there's a reason why I opened up to that passage. We got to make that happen tonight. Be the intangible tonight. Here we go. Lord, I am only one. I am only one. I am one. I am one. I cannot do everything. I cannot do everything. But I can do something. But I can do something. Which I'm about to do tonight. What I'm about to do tonight. With your help. With your help. I will do. I will do. Thank God I play for Indian Hill. Thank God I play for Indian Hill.
Players are also known to celebrate touchdowns and victories through visible prayers and other forms of religious expression. They can do this alone or in groups with their teammates, but it's not at all unusual to see a player pray. Even so, this can be controversial. For this, we can look at the contrast between a Christian player, Tim Tebow, and a Muslim player, Husain Abdullah. Tim Tebow started the Tebowing trend of 2011, where people would photograph themselves kneeling in Tebow's specific style in a very stereotypical Christian kneeling prayer position. At the height of the Tebow trend, people all over the world were sharing photographs of themselves in the posture that Tebow made famous. And Tebow ended up trademarking this particular symbol, saying that he didn't want anybody else to profit off of it. But if football is religious, it is also sort of implicitly Christian, as another pro football player, Husain Abdullah, learned when he was praying after a touchdown and got penalized for it. His prayer was more a Muslim prayer. He is Muslim, and his posture of prayer was more typical of Muslims and Christians. And this was, as I said, a controversy. People talked about it, debated whether it was appropriate for him to have done it, appropriate for him to have been penalized 15 yards for having done so. What we can see here, I think, is that football has a theology. Whether or not it is fully articulated in the same way as in Facing the Giants, there seems to be an implicit understanding that both that football is religious and that it is a certain kind of religion that goes along with football. And although Facing the Giants is probably the best known of the religious football film genre, that's not the only film. In 2024, another football film was made, which features Dean Cain, a former football player, but also better known as an actor, in the part of an announcer. The film focuses on a football coach who urges his players to accept Jesus as their savior so they can, among other things, play football together in heaven. Now, to be fair, the film does not say that is exclusively the reason, but there is an implication, of course, that football is a part of the afterlife as well.
So, I want to know right now, in front of God, in front of your teammates, in front of your parents and coaches, who's willing to accept that gift, okay? And not just so that we can play football in heaven, but so that we can be of service to Him eternally.
And maybe some would say this is not specific to football, that it's just coincidental that all of this surrounds football when certain parts of American life would infuse just about anything with religion. But I don't know that that's the case. For example, if you were to order coffee and your barista said a blessing over your drink before giving it to you, that might strike you as unusual, but it wouldn't probably strike you as all that unusual if a player were to say a prayer before going on the field or say a prayer after a touchdown. Prayer and football seem to go together more than other forms of recreational and work culture in the US. Now, that's not to say that football is unique. Pop stars, of course, are another group known to pray before they perform. But there is something else about this, something different. There is something that infuses football with a particular sense of religiosity. It's almost expected and natural. If the topic of this video was a little bit different, we could talk about how football, being American, might tie to its heightened religiosity given the heightened religiosity of American culture at large. We might also talk about the fact that football arose in the mid to late 19th century, a time when another thing was gaining popularity called muscular Christianity, which tied athleticism to religious piety. Muscular Christianity also focused on masculinity as a particular thing that was tied to one's religiosity. Like I said, though, this video is not about that. Actually, this video is about something I've been meaning to talk with you about for a long time. I want to examine how we think about religion itself. What is religion? What does it do? What is it for? How can we tell if something is religious? And this topic was inspired in part by something I saw on the Genetically Modified Skeptic channel, talking about how religious studies hasn't been able to define religion itself. So what exactly is the religion part of what I am doing here? If I am the religious historian, do we even know what a religion is? And if we don't know what a religion is, how can I talk about it? Here's something you should know about me. I used to really hate theory. Of all the courses I had as a religious studies student, both as an undergrad and a graduate student, I really did not enjoy the classes I had about theory. Now, the irony about that is that I stuck with it because most of the time when you start in a field, you will start with the theory courses. And since theory drove me crazy, it's kind of surprising that I'm here today with multiple graduate degrees in a field that I had a hard time getting into. But, you know, I got sucked in by the history angle, so here we are. Theory annoyed me because it felt like we were talking in circles and never getting anywhere. What was the point of us trying to define religion if we couldn't define religion? Over time, I've come to appreciate theory a lot more. It's not that we can define religion. It's that the effort to define religion is enlightening in and of itself. It teaches us things about who we are and how we think, and I think that's important to do. That's not to say that I like all theories. If you want to see a particularly unhinged version of me, ask me about Sigmund Freud's theory of religion. We're not going to do that today, but anyway, but I have long been fascinated by efforts to define religion, even though there isn't a single definition that fully satisfies me. And the fact is that we keep having people try to define it. I think that's something I share with other people. There's not a definition that fully satisfies people about what exactly religion is. But there's one definition of religion that has always reminded me of American football. That definition was written by Clifford Geertz. Clifford Geertz was an anthropologist who worked in the 20th century. He saw religion as a cultural system. And what that means is that humans are special. They live in cultures which are systems of meaning and symbol. We call a system of meaning culture, according to Geertz. And these patterns of meanings, these systems, work together to build cultures. Symbols are what convey these meanings. Geertz approached anthropology through something called thick description. This means it's not enough to describe what people do. You also have to describe what people intend by what they do. And it's important to recognize that meanings are not private. People do things in ways that assume that other people will know what they mean. Intention is a big part of that. If I wink at you, that's different than if I just close my eyes at you. It's different than if I have something in my eye and I'm trying to get it out. I'm not good at winking, so, There's an assumed meaning. It's only winking because somebody across from me knows what this means. Of course, not everybody will always understand symbols. That's why we have cultural differences. And generational shifts mean that meanings change and symbols begin to signify something else. If I give you this emoji, what does that mean? Is this, yes, this is good, I'm excited about it? Or is this sarcastic? It might depend on your culture. Tell me what the thumbs up emoji means to you. In 1966, Geertz published an essay called Religion as a Cultural System. Religion as a cultural system attempted to define religion as a cultural system, right? Within the framework of understanding culture and symbols and meanings. That's not to say that religion is the only cultural system that we use. It's just one of many, and it's one of the most important. We pass along meaning through all sorts of other ways. We pass meaning through art and politics and other things. But religion is just one of many ways that we signify to each other how we're a part of a group. Religion also has its own characteristics that make it distinct from other cultural systems. To Geertz, religion was both a worldview and an ethos. By saying it's a worldview, it's about beliefs and ideas. And by saying it's an ethos, that's to say that it motivates people to do things. So the worldview is the beliefs and ideas, and the ethos is the motivation. So people believe things, and that motivates them to do things. So let's talk about this actual definition of religion. It's in 5 parts. So, Geertz defined religion as 1, a system of symbols which acts to 2, establish powerful, pervasive, and long-lasting moods and motivations in men, by 3, formulating conceptions of a general order of existence, and 4, clothing these conceptions with such an aura of factuality that 5, the moods and motivations seem uniquely realistic. So let's unpack this and talk about how it relates to football. Let's talk about the first part, that religion is a system of symbols. A system of symbols is anything that conveys meaning. Objects, events, gestures, rituals are all a part of this. They're all symbolic, and football has so many symbols. The uniforms, the colors, the goalposts, the gestures that the referees make, the shape of the ball. You know it's a football because it looks different, even in silhouette. And there are mascots who engage in different activities with fans, and they have their own sort of symbolic meaning behind that. There are rituals like pouring Gatorade over a coach because you've won. There are rituals like storming the field because you're excited about your team having won. These are all part of systems of meaning that depend on all of us collectively understanding what it means. If pouring Gatorade over the coach wasn't already established as a gesture of goodwill and celebration, then it might be viewed as an act of hostility. What is key to symbols is symbols are not private. They have to have shared meaning. You can't have your own personal religion. You can't have a religion if you don't share it somehow with someone else. Football is certainly shared. Point 2. It provokes powerful, pervasive, and long-lasting moods and motivations in men. Now, when Geertz wrote about men, he meant human beings. That was a term then used as a sort of universal. So we could probably substitute humans for it. This is a way of saying that it makes people feel things and it motivates them to do things because of the way they feel. And we definitely see this in American football culture. People can get so disappointed that they even have riots. Or so excited that they have riots. One or the other. A team loss can make fans really depressed for a while, and a win can send them on a high. These moods can last a long time. People can be excited about a Super Bowl victory for years and decades after it happens. The fans are also motivated to show up in all kinds of weather and endure the difficulty in order to be part of this group experience. They will show up in all kinds of weather and dress in ways that might not be suitable for the weather because it is a shared part of the experience. Even if those ways don't align with what people might otherwise be doing if they were not spending time outdoors at a football game. And for the Super Bowl, which is the largest of these rituals, people will gather together in their homes and have special parties and eat special food. Or people will go and have tailgate parties in parking lots near where a game is being held. Let's talk about formulating a general order of existence. In some cases, people use football as an analogy. It sort of links to how things truly are out there beyond the football field. That is to say, that it tells us the ultimate meaning of it all. Here, Geertz would probably say that football is part of a religion, or that football is a cultural system, but not a religion. But I want to show you some examples of some sermon illustrations based on football and see what you think.
Minnesota Viking fans, we know what the definition of fair weather fans are. We're number one and we're fully engaged until we are not. I just think it's a great opportunity to look in the mirror today and go like, but really, is this how I treat my faith?
But behind me is the scoreboard, which is very important because clock management is a big part of the game. You have the game clock, then you have a play clock, time in between plays. And it's really critical in football to use time wisely. In the same way, the value of our time, how we spend our time on and off the field, inside and outside the church, all these things matter.
But the will to practice is more important than the will to play. And so how you and I, not just as a pastor, but you as a growing follower of Christ, how we live the other 6 days of the week is actually more important than our gathering on Sunday or other times of the week.
And now, as I said before, I think that football particularly ties to American Christianity, not to other religions. But if you know of other religious examples, I'd be happy to hear them. Really excited to know how that changes my own theories here. There are so many examples I can give you about how people say that football might give you a sense of the ultimate meaning of life. And we've talked about many of them earlier in this video. But football is also brought into church. Football is a sermon illustration for a lot of people. With point 4, Geertz says that religion is infused with an aura of factuality. That is, it is the sense of something being really real. It tells it like it is. And this links to point 5. The moves and motivations make people think that this is real, that it's really how it is. These things are mutually reinforcing. Football is so significant because it is so significant. Basically, if we all engage in the ritual of watching a game and having special food and gathering together and carving out the time for that, sometimes stores will even close. We do all this because it's important culturally. We value it because we value it, because other people value it, because we collectively value it. And by doing all of that, we continue to reinforce to ourselves that football is important. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't, right? And this is why I think we end up having national discussions about it and Supreme Court cases about praying on the 50-yard line in a way that we would not if people were praying for coffee. But we can take points 4 and 5 together, and basically what it means is that religion is special. It's unique. It's set apart from other parts of life. It makes us think that we've hit on what's really and truly important. It's not the same as ordinary life. To make these meanings, Geertz says that there has to be constant interplay among symbols, society, and individual psychology, sort of a triangle. Signals are sent, received, and returned, and they go up and down and around. So we do things. And investing in these things sends a signal to society that these things are important. And it also reinforces to us, these things are important. We're doing these things, they're doing these things, we all do these things really matter. Now, all of this said, I don't believe football is a religion. I imagine most of you don't think it is either. Although, if I've convinced you, I'd like to know. These days, I am much more comfortable saying that football is religious. And that football is religious even in cases where that's not immediately obvious to people. And maybe football and religion go so well together because football already has so many of the elements necessary to build a religion on. It has a lot of symbols and culture and shared meaning. But this feeling of not wanting to declare football a religion also tells us something about how we think about religion. According to definitions that I would imagine many of you viewing this have in your minds but haven't articulated yet, football might fall under the category of spiritual but not religious. I've said before, the term spiritual but not religious is problematic, but this may be part of my unpacking why that's the case. Few people would think of football as falling into the realm of spiritual but not religious. And the reason why football doesn't feel like it should be spiritual but not religious is probably twofold. One, it primarily appeals to men. It's a ritual that men engage in. And things that are spiritual but not religious tend to be coded female. It's also part of Western culture, and most of the things that people identify as spiritual but not religious are rooted in the cultures of the East. And I could say a whole lot more about that, but that may be a rant for another day. So my guess is, though, that you don't think football is spiritual but not religious, although some of you may be convinced of that based on this presentation. Who knows? Here's another reason people might say that, though. Football has elements of a religion. It has symbols and rituals and all of that, and it has a shared culture surrounding it. But it doesn't answer life's big questions. It doesn't actually tell us what we're supposed to think and do. It doesn't have a dogma. It doesn't hold ultimate significance. It doesn't tell us who to be. It doesn't provide an answer to everything. Football can't tell you why we get sick, for example. Well, unless we've suffered head injuries. Anyway, moving on. That also reflects something about how we define religion. Because Geertz isn't on his own, there are plenty of other people who've defined religion, so I'll talk a little bit about Max Weber. What you might hear people call as organized religion, Max Weber would have called rationalized religion. These rationalized religions are the ones that have abstract ideas in them that we might find among Western monotheism, Confucianism, that kind of thing. What sets them apart is that these religions have a centralized idea. They have some sort of abstract principle or deity that encompasses the whole thing. And that abstract principle or idea or God is set apart from ordinary things. But other religions, as I talked about in my video about American theisms, might be pantheist in their approach and might not set apart the divine from ordinary things, might not set apart whatever spiritual forces there are from everyday life. For them, all of society is saturated with symbolism and ritual. So a key difference might be that an abstract religion might see the cause for illness being some sort of abstract principle like justice or the sovereignty of God over human affairs. An abstract religious idea might be that illness exists because evil exists in the world. But other religious views might see one-to-one correlations there instead, that illness is caused by witchcraft, for example. But these distinctions might be a little bit too clear and clean. Monotheists might attribute an illness to demonic possession, for example. That is more of a one-to-one correlation under the overarching umbrella of evil existing in the world. And they might perform exorcisms in order to heal people, rather than praying for a generalized healing, rather than seeing that illness as an abstract concept that requires an equally abstract response, such as an appeal to the deity in question. Hi there, editing religious historian here. I realized when I was editing this video that somehow on film I did not say that Daniel Pale's work in making theories of religion understandable and accessible for a broad audience was super helpful in the preparation of this video. If you want to do a deeper dive learning about Clifford Geertz, Max Weber, Sigmund Freud, or any of the other major theorists in the study of religion, I really recommend his book. You will find the details of the sources that I used in the list of sources in the description to the video. I do link to a Patreon, but you do not have to join Patreon in order to view the file. Also, you can join the Patreon for free. So thank you for your patience. We return to your regularly scheduled content. So it's just not clearly divided in that way, for me. So it would seem that Geertz defines religion as something holding these abstract ideas. I don't necessarily think I can agree with that fully. I don't think that all cultural systems are religious. At the same time, I do think that a great many of our cultural systems are more religious than they might seem on the surface. I think the way that people behave around football suggests that there is something there. Something that is religious for some people, for a lot of people. So I don't think I can fully define what religion is. And I don't think that I can tell you definitively that football is or is not a religion. Or exactly why. I do feel comfortable saying that Geertz hasn't fully answered the question for me. So, is football religious in your view? I'm really curious to know what you think. Thank you again for joining me, to each and every one of my real and imaginary friends. I want to reassure you that I will continue to make these videos, though I will slow the pace a bit because I've got a lot going on. So please, if you'd like to see more of what is happening on this channel, you can click subscribe, click like, leave me a comment if you want to encourage the algorithm to show you more of this content. That's probably one of the best things you can do, as well as clicking the notification bell. You'll be notified every time I post again. So until next time, stay safe and stay curious. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.